Welcome to episode 7, The Farce Awakens. If you're waiting on a Maverick or a Bronco, these have been difficult times. There has been a lot of, I'd say, not so great publicity, and I'd even like to use the word bad because I feel that it's already hard enough waiting on a Bronco or waiting on a Maverick. But certain journalists are definitely making it harder than needs to be. Yeah, there's definitely some bad in all this. So if you're looking for good news, you're mostly at the right place. I'm gonna have to cover the bad news. I'm gonna have to cover how the news about Broncos not showing up over MSRP and the whole allotment system. So really involving the whole when am I getting my Bronco or when am I getting my Maverick. But I'm calling this episode The Farce Awakens, episode 7, because certain big journals are making this a lot harder. Probably not deliberately. I feel like they're not diving enough into the whole MSRP situation. When you've got titles that would make you believe that, Ford is deliberately sending more Broncos to dealerships that sell over MSRP, you can get pretty worked up and think that, somehow Ford's benefiting from this. And trust me, Ford doesn't benefit from a dealership selling over MSRP. It doesn't put any extra money in their pocket. So I'm going to explain how the whole allotment, that means how Ford distributes builds to dealerships, work, and really kind of debunk everything that's going on in the news lately. And of course, that's episode 7. And episode 8, you'll want to like and subscribe because, well, it helps feed a poodle. And you're also going to want to really like and subscribe because you're not going to want to miss episode 8, because in episode 8, we're really going to be talking about more in depth about solutions. What can you do for your Maverick order? What can you do for your Bronco order to help get it sooner? So first of all, we need to all understand how the allotment system works in order to know, what changes to make, why to make those changes, and really to gain so that you understand that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to distribution of vehicles. So we're going to talk all about that. First of all, before we really get started, I just want to start by debunking something really important. Whether you're at a really big Ford dealership, a medium, or a small Ford dealership, and trust me, I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, and I look at what goes on at really big, medium, and small Ford dealerships because that's what I have in my area. I actually have a very small Ford dealership, and I can tell you a smaller dealership gets smaller, less allotments. A bigger dealership gets bigger or more allotments, because a big part of the equation is all about how, traditionally, how many vehicles has that dealership sold, what's the competition in their area, and how many have they sold traditionally. We're not talking about last month. So that's a really big thing we're going to be debunking. A dealership that willingly, dealerships with the whole Bronco scenario, we're basically told very early on, you're going to get more or less between X number and X number. So let's say you're a medium-sized dealership. You'd have been given the idea that you're probably going to get somewhere around 15 to 25. And yes, when big news sources say that, they almost make it, you almost believe in reading it that dealerships that way oversold, that sold many more or took in many more reservations, that they weren't doing anything nefarious, that it was all innocent because, it was fair to believe that they just automatically get more allotments. Yes, and really no. Yes, because, dealerships were told, you'll get more allotments if you bring in more reservations, but they were still given a decent idea. Like, for example, a medium dealership, you'll get between 15 and 25 Broncos, and that will be based, because that's, what you could say your traditional sale volume. That's what your particular dealership in your area should expect to get based on historic data. Competition, all sorts of complicated numbers, but simply put, they had a good idea. So if you're going to get, let's say you get told you're going to get between 100 and 150 Broncos, and of course it's an about, because well in advance there's, that problems might arise, suppliers, you might have an issue with a supplier. So you get this range. Well, if you continue to sell way over 150 Broncos, well, that you're going to be causing trouble for those people, when you're selling to when you're taking in reservation number 600, or in the case of the news article, they said one dealer had 1,300 reservations, in assuming that the old system would exist and they get more allotments. No, yes, the old system has always been based if you draw in more customers. Eventually, the system adjusts to give you more vehicles, but slowly and surely, and dealers had a good idea. They knew very well that if they brought in, 1,300 reservations and turned them into orders, that they're not going to go from hey, you'll get somewhere between 100 and 150 Broncos for the 2021 year. And they knew that wasn't going to somehow magically explode to times 10 and they get 10 times as many Broncos. So let's just jump right into this, because I've got a bone to pick. I've got stuff to debunk. I really want us to be a community where we rely on each other, we help each other out, and we don't troll each other. We don't get each other worked up on stuff that we know could be more precise and helpful with a little more research or a little more data. So let's just get right started and jump right in. Don't forget, also in episode 8, I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be looking more into this, but it looks like Ford will finally cut off incoming new Bronco reservations or orders, the way they have for the Maverick, and really focus on the ones they already have. So that's a developing story. I want to fill that up. So let's just jump right in and talk about the news we've got in our hands right now. So with Ford, being in the limelight right now, it's no surprise. It's not because they're a whole lot different than other manufacturers, and it's not because things are going horrendously different at Ford than other manufacturers. Like I mentioned, the RAV4, you can be waiting, depending on the dealership, 2 to 3 years for a RAV4, Toyota RAV4 Prime. A VW Atlas, very popular at the moment, 1 to 2 years depending on the dealership, with occasional exceptions. But Ford's no different. But Ford's in the limelight. Why? Because, well, it pays to talk about Ford right now. There's a whole lot of interest in the Bronco. The Mach-E is incredibly popular, and the Ford F-150 Lightning, also very popular. The Maverick, if you think about it, all these vehicles have a good 200,000 people who are interested in knowing what's going on with them. Altogether, that's almost 1 million people that have an interest in hearing about what's going on at Ford. So, the news, when I see titles like Ford keeps sending the Bronco to dealers who mark up prices while reservation holders are told to wait. And then, as the story goes on, it almost sounds like how things are worded, that Ford's, deliberately sending inventory to dealerships just so that they can mark it up. And that's not the case. And I'm going to talk about my experiences from the last few years to really kind of debunk this, because I can tell you the Bronco is a perfect example, and the Maverick is turning into an example of this as well. The factories have to work. They've got to produce vehicles. They want to do everything they can to avoid sending people home for a week or two, because they can't, build a group of individuals orders. So how the factory works, it's really simple. The factory plans ahead based on what they're going to be able to have from their suppliers. They look at what Mavericks or Broncos they can build. Now, if you're in line at a dealership, now you could figure, hey, my reservation puts me at the front of the line. No, because Ford can't just timestamp all global orders. Well, they could, but if they time-stamped all global orders, here are some issues that would arise. First of all, if a dealership, for example, we saw it with the Bronco, and even this article talks about it, one dealership in particular kind of roping in 1,300 reservation holders because they're offering $1,000 off MSRP. That dealership obviously either didn't know better or figured, hey, we'll just get all these orders and Ford will have to send us vehicles. Even though they would have been told in advance, as I know with my local dealer, we had a very good idea. We know already basically how many F-150 Lightnings we're going to get for year one. And back with the Bronco, we also knew about how many Broncos we were going to be allotted. So you have dealerships that can, I think it's the responsibility of the dealership to stop selling vehicles. It makes no sense to sell 1,300 Broncos and continue to advertise you'll take $1,000 off when you know you're getting $150 for the first year for 2021 Broncos. And what this does is really they're drawing in people way out of the region, because how allotments work is Ford wants to evenly and fairly distribute vehicles to all regions. It can't just be, for example, San Francisco that really likes hybrids that gets pretty much 95% of the Maverick hybrids, because being that they're an area that's very attuned and aware of, the whole hybrid market, that they jump on hybrids, within the first 30 minutes or an hour. California buys out all hybrid Mavericks. How would we feel as customers if, we ordered hour 4, but really at the bottom of it, we're not getting a vehicle ordered, June, whatever, I think it was 6th or 10th, the first day of orders. Well, you know what? We ordered 4 hours too late, so you're going to get it in year 2, because they're all going to California, because they have, they had a customer base really eager and ready to pick up the Maverick hybrid. No, Ford wants to distribute these to dealerships so that everyone has a bit of a chance to see the Maverick. Everyone has a bit of a chance to drive a Maverick, which brings me to an incredible piece of news. And I think every dealership should do this. My local dealership, when they had a Maverick that showed up, the person who ordered it test drove it, and for reasons I can't disclose, the vehicle was not taken. Now, some dealerships would say, cha-ching, here's my chance to sell a Maverick, $7,000 or $10,000 over MSRP, because there aren't any. I get to pick my price. No, what my local dealership did is it's not for sale. They sell Mavericks at MSRP when you order them. And when they're, when this one isn't available, and even when they've had some in the past, maybe the idea hadn't dawned yet, but they still sold a vehicle, a Maverick, that became available at MSRP. But this one is going to be a demo. And I think that's an incredible idea, because there's a lot of frustration that, by some people, there's frustration that they can't drive the vehicle, and they're expected to just order it and wait for it, not really having gotten to experience it. So I think my local dealerships got the right formula. Every dealership should, when they have a dropout, don't put it over MSRP to make a few $1,000s more. Let people use it. Let people discover it and get more orders. Now back to allotments and orders. So the issue with a dealership that puts, advertises $1,000 off for whether it's a Maverick or a Bronco, they're going to get people from all over the country to buy from them. And they know in advance about more or less how many they're going to get. So I have a huge issue with them continuing to sell above the 150 they knew they'd get, almost selling 10 times as many. Not theoretically, it's going to take years for some people to get their Mavericks. And, this is what these news articles are talking about, that it'll take years, but they don't talk about the solutions. And the solutions, Jim Farley himself said, there's a Bronco hotline, and I'm going to post it on the side. There's a Bronco hotline phone number you can call so that you can switch your order. And the other issue I have with this is right now Ford is, I would assume, based on the variables I'm seeing, the things at play that I've been seeing, Ford's trying to move to a bit of a hybrid system between Tesla's no dealership model and the traditional dealership model, because a lot of the new models like the Maverick or the Mach-E have much less, profitability or potential to make money with profit for the dealerships. And that's because I'm quite certain Ford wants, the benefit of having a dealership where you can go and ideally have a great conversation with someone, be properly informed, really sit down, test drive the vehicle, but that you don't have to spend, hours haggling or hours shopping, that it's the right price at every dealership. And of course, by cutting down on the margins for the dealership, the potential margins, theoretically, everyone would sell it at the price that Ford tells you to sell it at. Now, there are some dealers that have been doing markups, of course. And those dealers, I've been talking about this since September 2021. Ford has been telling dealers, at least in my region, that they can't lose more than 10% of their clients. And by lose 10% of their clients, I mean price match needs to occur. Name match, sorry. The name of the order and the person delivered to, so that the final contracts need to match up 90% of the time, so that there's only space for 10% client loss. And this does turn into a price match situation, because if you try to increase the over MSRP all these people's orders, which I have a huge problem with, I think that's really not okay, because you waited for your vehicle. You obviously deserve to pay the factory price. Well, if you start asking $5,000 more for all these vehicles when they come in off order, guess what? People are going to say, nope, no, that's fine. I'm walking away. You fall below 10%. And the consequence is, dealers are being told the consequence is less allotment. That doesn't mean that Ford isn't isn't trying to get vehicles in the hands of reservation holders. What it does mean is that they're trying to make sure dealers don't overprice the vehicles. And with, the new vehicles, whether it's the Lightning, the Mach-E, or the Maverick, definitely seeing that profit margins are slimmer for dealerships, meaning that, there's a downside also to a $1,000 rebate on a Bronco. The dealership picks up 1,300 orders when they knew in advance they had space for 150. And how competition works, obviously, is what happens if everyone jumps in on this boat. And then, the dealer over wherever is tired of losing customers. So they see online $1,000 rebate at X dealer. Guess what? We'll do 1,500. Then the week after, someone does 2,000. And within no time at all, everyone's offering them, not everyone, but some people are offering them at cost. Well, 1,300 reservations and orders at a dealer that gets on 150, if you end up with a few dealers offering the vehicles at cost, well, they might pick up, let's say 10,000. And then what's the point of having dealerships that you can walk into and get served and ask the questions you need if now over time there's very few dealers. There's only, let's say, 10 dealers across the country, and you have to travel 12 hours or more to get to that dealer. Well, eventually, anyways, when there's no longer any competition, prices will go back up. And when there's next to no competition or product, we're already living proof that prices can increase. So you don't want to be in a situation where there's very few dealerships. One, a whole bunch less people would be working, but more importantly for us as customers, it'd be easier for businesses to abuse on the prices. So that's what's actually going on with that. The allotment system, of course, is, I think, a very fair system. It's based on how many vehicles you have historically sold, what your market is, and Ford has a certain number of vehicles to distribute across more or less 3,300 dealerships. And if you're a big dealership, well, you get more allotments. There's nothing wrong with that. You get more units produced for you because you're a bigger dealership that traditionally sells many more vehicles. So it makes sense for a dealership that sells 10,000 units per year get more Broncos and more Ford Mavericks than a dealership that sells 1,000 units or 150 units, because there are some dealerships that will sell 150 units. And why would they get more or as many allotments as a dealership that gets 1,000? So that's what's going on with that. I hope I'm clear with it. And I think since the whole Bronco situation, I've always said, shop your dealer, ask if you order with them where you are in line, like, how many people are in front of you and how many approximate do they get per month. And if they don't know, then ask them about approximately how many you should get this year. If the dealership says, here number 1,200 and we're getting 150 for the first year, but you get $1,000 rebate, you should probably consider going elsewhere. But Ford, to help clean all this up, Jim Farley did say that people who ordered in 2021 before March, and I'm going to try to get the exact date, I think it was March 19th if I recall correctly, they're going to be price protected. And that means you had to get your order in. Doesn't matter what date you have as a reservation. It's about when you got your order in to the dealership. So I'm going to try to find that exact date for you all. If not, I'll obviously have to post it afterwards because I don't want to waste your time here. But yeah, it's going to be right around, first of all, the phone number to call if you do want to switch dealerships, if you're in the case of a Bronco, and who knows if they'll do this later on for the Maverick, but it's 1-800-334-4375. So that's the Bronco support team to help you change dealerships. And March 19th, 2021, your order had to be in before that date at a dealership in order to be price protected. So you ordered a 2021 Bronco, well, you're price protected, so you're still going to get the same price. And Broncos have gone up in price, and they will continue to go up in price. So that should protect your original interest rate and the suggested retail price of the vehicle. Now, why did some dealers have Bronco inventory, and why will possibly some dealers end up with Maverick inventory? Well, the Bronco situation explains what could happen with the Maverick situation quite well. Dealers were told, contact your clients and try to remove these constraints from their orders so that they get built. And dealers had, a good amount of time to call up their clients and say, hey, the hard top's an issue. Would you like to take the hard top off? That will really help, but ideally also the 2.7. And there is a list of constraints, the 7 deadly sins, or, what would put you on Santa's naughty list to make sure you don't get a Bronco for Christmas. And dealers had a chance to call up their clients. Now, if enough clients didn't actually make the switch, but the dealer, for example, is promised, let's say, 100 Broncos for year one, they're going to get their 100 Broncos. And if there's only 60 buildable Broncos, well, that dealership is going to get 60 buildable Broncos to reservation holders. Now, the reservation holders, the other 40%, had a chance to switch. But if they don't switch, then they end up with 40% of their Broncos coming in as inventory. And that's actually how I got my second Bronco. Too many people on the list waiting did not want to make a switch, did not want to make the sacrifice, so they'll wait until the parts are actually available to build their Broncos. And the dealership, which was promised in advance, you'll get this many Broncos for the year, they got cut back a little, but they still ended up getting some inventory. So that's why one of my Broncos has a blue sheet. It's because it was there just weren't, of the people waiting at my local dealership, there weren't any that were actually in a position enough. Well, there weren't any who were willing to switch to what was actually buildable. So the dealership got buildable Broncos. Now, should they be sold over MSRP? Absolutely not. And, Ford is, Jim Farley himself said that they're doing everything they can to ramp up Bronco production. We obviously have seen Bronco production ramp up a ton from original months, and right now they're building about twice as many Broncos than they are Rangers. So they're really focusing in on the Bronco because the factory can only produce a certain amount of total units per day, per month, per year, and those get divided between the Bronco and the Ranger. So they're really putting a favor on the Bronco to get all y'all reservation holders their Broncos as soon as possible. And Ford, with the allotment system, how it works, won't just reward, an area that went absolute, a dealership that just wasn't, either organized enough, whether they did it purposely or not. When you're getting 150 Broncos for the year and you're at 200, you should really start telling people, what, if you order with us, you're not going to get your Bronco as a year one. It's going to be a 2022. And if you do happen to be at 1,000 Broncos or 1,300 Broncos and you're getting at 150, you better start telling people that it's going to be like an extremely long wait, maybe 4 or 5 years. But that wasn't done, and that's on the dealers, not Ford. So I want to clear up that news because that's just bad publicity for Ford, and it's not fair publicity. It's not the whole story. So that's the whole story. That debunks that. Now, let's see what's next. For the next video, like and subscribe. We're going to be discussing whether it's fair to assume that Ford did, guesstimate properly how many Mavericks they'd sell, because obviously they sold way more than expected. Now, is this fair? Is this unfair? Should they have known better? We'll be talking all about that. So we'll be looking at Honda Ridgeline sales over, really a 15-year period. Over 15 years, we're going to be looking at Ford Ranger sales, a full frame, Honda Ridgeline, a unibody. And we're going to really answer the question, should we be, should we really be upset with Ford? Did they make some fair or unfair assumptions about how many of these Mavericks that they would build? And where are all the microchips going? So we'll talk all about that. You'll want to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it this far, please comment finisher. Really helps me know what's going on. And if you have questions, comments, concerns, throw them in. I will do my absolute best to get to them in mixing up my time between making content and answering questions. So if I don't get to you, don't be shy. You can always ask it again. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week.